It's actually a great way of improving not just the Hornby Railroad coaches, but also a lot of older coaches that can be got for a lot less money than new items coming through in the shops. Hi there everyone, I hope I find you well. I'm Jennifer Kirk, welcoming you back up here to the loft on Weir Yard. Now today I am going to be doing a little project. I know a lot of you have probably got in your collection some older coaching stock that doesn't really run as you would really like it to. Probably it has plastic wheels, and as we all know, plastic wheels really aren't the best. Now there's a lot of coaches out there, either in the bottom of people's stock boxes or indeed quite cheaply available second hand. And I've got a little project here. I've very kindly been given a set of wheels from DCC Concepts, which are a replacement fit for coaching stock and really do upgrade the performance. They also include some pickups, so I'm going to investigate just how easy it is to use those pickups that are integral to the axles to actually add working lighting into those same coaches. So imagine this, you could get, for example, a Hornby Railroad Pullman coach. You could re-wheel it and you could add all working lamps on all the tables, and all of a sudden you've got yourself a super detail Hornby coach. It does sound quite appealing, so today, as a proof of concept, I'm going to re-wheel a Hornby Railroad coach and show you the difference that makes to the performance, and then I'm going to go a little bit further and I'm going to see just how easy it is to add those lights. So come with me and let's get started. For today's video project, this is the coach that I'm going to be looking to replacing and upgrading its wheels, adding lighting pickups, and actually adding some kind of coach lighting inside them as well. Now, as a railroad coach, these come with plastic wheels, and I've already done an initial test with this of how well it rolls. I've put it on the 4% gradient on Weir Yard, and as you can see, when I give it a prod, it actually doesn't want to roll. At the top of the gradient, it would just kind of stay put until you pushed it again, and it was only as it went further down the slope that it did start to roll. Now, plastic wheels used to be the bane of modelers. Introduced in the 1960s by Hornby 00, and they were billed as being an improvement when in fact they were a retrograde step. They do tend to have a higher friction, and also they act like a magnet for muck, and the treads very quickly get gummed up with all manner of gunge. Now, as a camping coach, this has curtains in the windows, so we're not really going to see the interior. Actually, it will be interesting to see if there is actually any kind of an interior in this coach, but I'm going to look to add some kind of a lighting effect, which I think will look quite good. If this coach is parked in a siding, it will mean that it will look like somebody's home. But you can also add working table lamps if, say, you've got an older Hornby Railroad Pullman coach, using these wheels with the pickups to get the power in there. And it's actually a great way of improving not just the Hornby Railroad coaches, but also a lot of older coaches that can be got for a lot less money than new items coming through in the shops. Now, what I'm going to use for this project is some of the replacement wheel sets from DCC Concepts. They're available in a number of different gauges, so these are 00, but they also do EM, and they're good solid metal wheels, and they've also got a spring type pickup on the axles, and I'll show you a little bit more about that as we go through this project. You get 8 axles in a pack, so that's actually enough to do 2 coaches. And what you need to do is make sure that you get the right diameter. You can see there that we've got 14mm, 12mm and 10.5mm, and Those equate to 3'6", 3 foot and 2'8" diameter wheels. Now when you're measuring the wheels, do be very careful. You don't want to measure the flange, otherwise you'll end up with completely the wrong size wheels. It's the running face diameter is what you want. Also, as part of this project, I've got some Nano LEDs. We've used these before on the Hellion adding independently switched working cab lights. But I've also got the bearing reamer set here, and you get two in there. You can see two different shapes and sizes, and that's simply for ease of fitting them into a bogie or axle boxes to do the reaming. You don't have to use both of these. It's simply a case of the different shapes makes them useful depending on the design of whatever it is that you're just wanting to ream out the bearings to make sure that these wheel sets run really smoothly. Now also, because I always get a lot of complaints about my poor quality soldering and wiring, I've gone and got some of this shrink wrap for improving the wiring. So wherever I'm doing soldering, I'm going to look into just using some of these. Now you don't have to use the full length. If you want to be economical, you can just cut with a pair of scissors just the amount that you need off each of these to make sure that a pack goes a lot further. And I don't know whether we're going to need them, but I've also got the micro harnesses, and I'm just going to have these to hand in case it is helpful to use them. But actually it may be that we don't use those. And the only tools that I can envisage using in this project, I've got the wire strippers and a pair of wire cutters just for convenience, and then I've got a pair of jeweler's screwdrivers, very small flathead and a larger flathead, and these are actually more for getting the coach apart, because it does appear to be, from what I've seen on the underside, just push clip together, so it's just about unclipping all of that. Now I'm going to concentrate on the wheels, and what I'm going to do is just show you these. Each of these wheels comes with, you can see on there's like a spring wound around the axle, and that tail there is what we wire back into the coach. So that effectively is the pickup, and what we have on here is that the wheel is insulated from the axle there. You can just make out the black bush, but it is live to that wheel face. And that means that we can actually pick up from the actual axle itself and get really good electrical continuity. And simply by reversing the orientation of these wheels in the other bogie, we can have a positive and negative on the coach wiring. So just a really great way of doing it. The pack does also come with some wire too, and I am going to use some of this just for getting the power feed into the coach. So I'm just going to put these to one side, and what I'm going to do now is start the dismantling of the coach. The railroad coaches are quite easy to get to come apart. First up, just want to remove the bogies, so I'm just going to use the smaller of the jeweler's screwdriver just to release the clips, give it a good firm tug, and the bogies come on out. Turn it round again, just loosen that clip, and should just pop out. The rest of the coach is just held by a few clips. Now these can be a bit fiddly, just be careful what you're pushing on, but you can just free them up there. And I just want to do a quick once over just to see what it is we're going to be dealing with. So there's the chassis, and actually funnily enough, this coach does have an interior, even though with the curtains it doesn't really have any need for it. But there is actually a full interior in here, and you can see that the windows are all masked out with that stick-on curtain effect. This actually does prove quite helpful because I can mount the lights to illuminate different compartments, and that will give the effect of different rooms in the camping coach lit up. So that's what the ultimate plan is. So we can put the coach body to one side, And actually, first up, we'll put the rest of the coach aside, and we're just going to concentrate on these axles. First things first, let's get the old ones out. It's just simply a case of manoeuvring them out, quick and easy. And you can see there just kind of plastic faces, so let's get rid of those. Now, in the coach, we're going to remember they're going to be facing away from each other, so I want the pickups to both be the right way round in each. But first up, actually, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're going to use the axle bearing reamers. Just going to take these out and show you these. The two different shapes just really allow these to fit in around whatever other detail is in the axle boxes, and we're probably going to be just fine with this one. So you put it in as if it is an ordinary axle. Make sure it goes into the axle boxes, and then gentle pressure, and just turn it a few times, and that just cleans up the axle boxes. You don't need to remove a huge amount of material, just enough that we have got enough space for the wheels. If you find that there's detail that stops you getting this one in, then we've got the alternative as well. I'm just going to gently squeeze those, rotate that a few times, and you might just see a few little flakes of plastic. That's perfectly normal. I'm going to do both of these, and then we're done. And then keep these reamers to one side, because they are always great to have around for when you're doing projects like this. Next up, let's get our wheel sets. So get our first two, we've got our springs there. We're going to have the tails both on the same side. So I'm going to put these in, just stop that from rolling away. And we just want to get these in. And already I can feel that there's a lot better rolling on these. And we can paint these faces something like matte black if we want, once we've got everything in. We can see those two little tails. We will solder them together, and then we'll feed the wire up through the pivot. Now I'm just going to put that to one side there. And let's just remember we've got our insulated sides on that side of the axle. So on this one we need it on this side. And that way when we wire it all up, we get a full circuit. Hopefully, all going well, all of our lights will light up. And if you weren't adding anything like lights into your coaches or wagons, you could actually stop at this point. Having re-wheeled these, they'll be much smoother runners, much freer rolling bogies, and you could just end there. But of course we're not ending there. We are going to move on and see about putting some lighting into this coach. So my plan is we're going to put some wire, bridge those together, and then the wire itself is going to go up through the center of the pivot so it doesn't catch on anything. And then we will start the assembly of this such that we can then bring the wires up into the coach body and start adding in our nano LEDs. So I'm going to make the pickups now, and this is the wire that comes with the wheel sets, and it's actually quite a strong wire. So I'm just looking here, let's just work out how we're going to do this. So I think first up, I'm going to just strip a length of this wire, twist that together, and then I'm going to tin that, and I'm going to bridge between these two. Once I've bridged it, I'm going to just clip off that piece of wire, and then I'm going to repeat that for the other bogie, and that just joins the two pickups together. And then we're going to drop a piece of wire down through, and solder that to both of these, and that's what's going to feed through into the interior of the coach. I've got the soldering iron up to temperature, and I'm just going to tin this piece of wire. And I'm also going to just tin each of these ends. Right, next up I'm going to so that's one. Get those to join. So we've got that in. And what I'm going to do is just trim the length of this and feed that just down through the center, and there we have the first of our two pickups in place. So I'm just going to put that to one side, and I'm going to repeat that on the second bogie. Right, well, I've got both of these done now, so I'm going to hold that up nice and close, and you can see there that we've got the pickups on the axles just wired together, and then onwards to this wire that I fed through the central pivot. So what I need to do now, I need to make sure I've got this the right way up, and I'm just going to feed these in and clip them back into place. Just make sure that coupling doesn't get in the way. Again, the other one, feed that wire in, make sure that that coupling isn't getting in the way. We've got our chassis with the wires poking up and through. Next step, I want to get the interior in, and there we have the rolling chassis. The wires are now up and into the interior. So we turn our attention now to the lights, and for these I've got the Nano LEDs, and these come in the packet with a selection of resistors. So I don't want these to be too bright. We've got some 15k there. We've got some 1k. And we've also got, let's see, what else have we got here? 1k and 10k. Now I'm going to wire these, bearing in mind that my layout is running on DCC. And actually, if you're running on DC as well, to avoid trying to back power the diodes, they are diodes, they won't power the wrong way, but if you put too much power through, it can cause them a bit of grief. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wire probably 4 LEDs into this coach, and I'm going to wire them in as 2 pairs with the LEDs reversed as a pair. So no matter which way the current is flowing, one or other of those LEDs will light up. Now on a DCC layout, that current is of course effectively like AC, so it's running one way then the other, and that will mean that because that happens quite quickly, to the naked eye it will appear that both light up, but actually one of them is protecting the other and vice versa. And I think if I've got 4 LEDs wired in 2 sets of pairs like that, and I'm going to add in, I think I'm going to go with a 10k resistor in the middle and maybe 2 1k resistors, one at either end. So I'm going to put a lot of resistance in this. If it proves to be too much, we can always cut down the amount of resistance that we're using, but I'm going to just solder these in. So first up, let's take a 10k resistor, and then I also want to have 2 of the 1k resistors. So the way I want to wire this, every LED will be in series with 12 kiloohms of resistance, and that should protect them. So I've sorted out from the packet 4 of these LEDs, and they really are tiny, just really a dot appearing on the camera there. Now you've got to very carefully just sort out these tails, and I'll tell you now, what you need to look for is, you see one tail is longer than the other. Now the longer tail is always positive, I believe. So as long as we go work on that principle, we're actually using these on a alternating type current, the DCC signal. So as long as we get 2 one way round and 2 the other way round in parallel, then actually we're going to be all right. But that's what we need to look out for. And each of these, let's just very careful, because you don't want to pull these out of the back of the LED. And again, that's the longer tail and that's the shorter tail. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to prepare the ends of these wires, and first up I will be just putting some of these resistors in. And as promised before, I'm going to be using some of these heat shrink pieces. So what I'm going to do is just get some of these out. And for this job, I only need one of them. I'm going to cut it into 3 pieces. So let's get that one piece out. And I'm going to need 3 pieces of this, so they don't need to be hugely long. So I'm actually just going to cut that into 3. Then let's just make sure that we have one of these ready on each of these. It's always very easy to forget the heat shrink, so if we just pre-thread those on. And then I'm going to prepare the resistors. Start off with the 1K, and I'm going to solder one of those to there, or another one to there, and then we'll move on to soldering up these LEDs. And I'm sure your soldering skills are so much better than mine. Just going to put that heat shrink over there. And I think that this will just shrink off the heat from the soldering iron. Okay, let's get that heat shrink in place, just to protect all that. So that's on there. Right, let's just slide that to one side. And then I'm going to start making up these looms. So I want to solder positive to negative. Now we just get the other 2 together. So effectively we're making a parallel pair of reversed diodes. And let's not forget that I am the world's worst solderer, so if I can do this, then you can as well. So there we have it. We've got a pair of LEDs that are wired up in parallel, and I'm going to just repeat that, and then we're going to put them together and I'll talk you through. So I've got together my wiring loom with the 2 pairs of nano LEDs, and I've got a resistor in the center. That's the 10 kilo ohm resistor, and I actually really do like this heat shrink. Not only is it protecting the soldered pieces from any kind of potential for shorting, but it actually really does strengthen the whole joint as well, so I really do like that. Now I've just tinned the 2 resistors at the other end. Again, need to make sure that I feed the shrink wrap in first. It's apparently often quite an easy thing to forget about. So We're now going to get this soldered in. Again, I am the world's worst solderer, but a lot of these things, it's about just having confidence that as long as you're methodical and follow the process, no matter how badly, then you will be able to get a result. And you know, a lot of these little projects, that's what it's all about, is just giving yourself the chance to actually succeed. So I'm just going to slide this shrink wrap over that really bad joint, and let's just bring the soldering iron in. And the shrink wrap, actually, it doesn't melt or burn. That is actually resting on the soldering iron, not the bit where I actually solder, just a little bit further up, and that is shrinking quite well. So what I need to do now, final piece of the shrink wrap, is find the appropriate ends. These are really fiddly, I will warn you now, but if somebody as ham-fisted as me can do this, then you will stand no problems whatsoever to get this done. Right, so the final join now. Let's just try and do this without getting tangled in cables. And let's just get that in there. That's done, so we're done now with the soldering iron. And now the next step is to tidy this up and work out just where we want the LEDs to go. And I can use some of these unused compartments to hide away the wiring. If you had a coach that had, say, ordinary windows that you could see through, then what I would suggest is actually to glue the LEDs and the wiring along the roof, so that they're not visible. But with this coach, as a camping coach, I have the luxury that I don't have to be quite as neat as that. So what I'm going to do is just try and feed all of this in. I'm going to get some tape, actually, neaten things up just ever so slightly, just to try and hold this into place. And then where I actually want these LEDs, I think first up I'm going to just tidy these in there. And these nano LEDs, the filaments on them are actually quite thin and unobtrusive, so even if you were able to see through the windows, I don't think it's going to really show too much. I'm going to go to this end now. I'm going to just try and fiddle in some of this extra wiring, and I want LED in that compartment. So what I'm actually going to do is to hold it in the right place. I'm going to make sure it's stuck to the underside of that tape. I'm going to put an LED into this compartment. Again, a little bit of tape just to hold that in place. Just bend that up a little bit. So we've got our LED there. And then we've got one final LED, which I am going to fit back and into there, in the right place. And then we've got just a couple of extra bits of wire to just neaten into the top here. I just wanted to show you the inside of the coach now with the lights working, and those metal wheels are so much better than the previous plastic ones. And it just shows that actually if all you want to do is upgrade the wheels, that is a really quick and easy way of doing it. And it would really improve a lot of the older coaching stock that came with plastic wheels, both from Hornby, from Bachmann, but also from Daypole, and going even further back, Trian coaches would be much improved and made into some actually quite good runners with the application of these wheels. with those pickups that come on every axle, which you can remove if you don't want to use them, but they allow a lighting conversion to any coach. So there's a whole range of different lights that you could add in. Say you got one of the Hornby Railroad Pullman coaches, it's quite possible to convert all of the tables within to be lit up Pullman style table lamps, and you could, as a project using these wheels and a number of other products, actually create the equivalent of a Hornby Super Detail fully lit Pullman very, very easily using these parts that are available. So no longer do you need to pay best part of £70 to £80 for a coach. Instead, you can upgrade the ones that you either already have or ones that you can pick up actually quite cheaply through second-hand shops and also through eBay. And all of that we can get to disappear into the body. So I'm just going to very carefully just bring this down over the top. Just make sure that there's no wiring protruding, and then it's just a case of pushing the body back into place, and there we have it. The full build is done. It's just simply a case of testing this out. So I've got the coach on the track, and actually what's apparent is that the curtain material is quite thick, but you can see the light shining through there, and if I just lift the bogie off, you can see the lights in the coach going on and off. And you could imagine that if we had slightly more LEDs in there, if we had no curtain material in there, actually we could get quite a good effect. And we can mess about with those resistor values as well. We've currently got 12 kilo ohms, so actually we could cut a lot of that out, get it down to maybe 1 or 2 kilo ohms, and that would be a lot better. But the proof of concept is there. Now I'm just going to give this a little push, and you can see that on the gradient it actually races all the way down. Well, I've really enjoyed showing you that little project, and I've challenged myself in a way with this. I always say I am probably the world's worst solderer. I really don't like soldering, and I'm not very good at it. But the fact that I was able to complete this project and make it work within a reasonable timescale just shows you that you too can take on a project like this and succeed. So just give yourself that chance, and you might be quite surprised on what you can achieve. Don't forget to tickle that like button and also share this video as well. Sharing is caring, and it does help the channel grow. And if you really want to help support us to keep making the videos that you want to see, then don't forget that you can head on over to Patreon and help the channel out that way with a number of different tiers of support. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take great care of yourself. And until next time, happy modelling. Bye for now. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon. And an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Offshore Allen, oorail.co.uk, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Peter Bolton, Brian and Dorothy Mudd, Gary Lewis, David Quinn, Sparky107107, George Botterini, Chris Moss, Robert Steers, MD of San Juan Model Company and Grantline Products, Sam Yates, Dale Williams, John N from NC, NYMRish, Jonathan Foster, Peter, Graham Foster, Clifford Ison, Larry W. Grant, and NI Railways 4000 class. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.